Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Adam Singer from Shelf Clutter, a popular YouTube channel that focuses on making sense of Kickstarter pages. He's also a designer and a partner in a Canadian game design studio called Evergreen Games. Adam, welcome to the Binge. How are you?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks a lot for having me. It's exciting to get out on the radio waves. It's nice to actually talk to someone. I have you on webcam here. It's nice to actually meet someone new, sort of face to face.
Yeah, it's good to see each other face to face. Of course, the Board Game Binge, for people listening, if they ever want to catch these live or the visual versions of them, you can join us on the Facebook page Board Game Binge. But for those of you who are out there just listening through your podcast, unfortunately today you don't get to see Adam's beautiful face in his yellow earphones. You're gonna have to hear his voice. So again, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. I thought we'd start off by getting you just to talk a little bit about what Shelf Clutter is. What is it? So it's a YouTube channel. It seems pretty popular. You're churning out at least looks like a couple episodes a week. What is the channel about, and who are you targeting, and what's the intent?
Yeah, so I guess just to take a couple steps back, I guess Shelf Clutter itself, so I sort of started that as a brand to help, package my games, or like a brand so that when I'm creating games, I have something to tie it to rather than just, hey, who's this random Adam Singer character?
Yep.
So I thought it'd be good to sort of build a brand around that. So the whole thing started with the game design. And as I've been designing games, I've sort of been, meeting new people, getting exposed to other channels, and also taking an interest in, different Kickstarters and board games and looking for my own information. So during all that, I guess I always was really interested in the different Kickstarters that were coming out. And there's a lot of playthroughs and lots of reviews as well for some of them as the Kickstarters are going on. But I really just wanted to understand, okay, what am I getting into? Like, what is this Kickstarter offering? And I didn't see a whole lot of information out at the time that I started the channel on that. So I was like, you know what? I'm doing all this research anyway. How much extra work could it be to throw together a video? And it turns out quite a lot of extra work. So yeah, it's not an easy task. So it's definitely, I respect all the other content creators out there. But getting back to your question there, so the main thing I offer on the channel, or I guess the main few things I try to offer, is helping the viewers be able to decide for themselves if this is a game that they want to back. I find Kickstarters can be really confusing.
Yeah.
And then just deciding like, hey, should I get this now? Should I wait till retail? Should I get this at all? That's all.
Will it even hit retail is another question, right? It might not even hit retail. Yeah,
exactly. So there's a lot of questions to answer, and to really do the research, it can take you hours, like watching videos, going through the page, going through the updates, making sure you're getting all the facts straight. Even a lot of the info, sadly, is only ever offered in the comments. So definitely, if you're super interested in a Kickstarter campaign, I recommend just like opening as many comments as you can and just search collaborator in your browser and just like skip through everything that they say, because there's a lot of info in there that you won't necessarily catch in the campaign. So I do all that, and then I try to package that up and deliver it in a concise and hopefully entertaining way as well. And that's sort of what got me to where I am today. I just started not long ago either, actually. So I started in December of last year, so it's only been a few months.
Oh, wow.
And getting a few between 100 and 200 new subscribers every month, and also sort of pivoting along the way. You try a few things and then see how that works, and then you tweak it a little bit, always trying to improve and figure out what people are looking for and trying to offer that to them in a little bit more of an accessible way. And one of those ways that I've really been focusing on lately is upcoming Kickstarters. So I don't really see too many other channels at all covering upcoming Kickstarters, especially to the degree that I cover them. So I do a video every week now where I'm collecting all this information constantly, and then in like a quick 10-minute video, I'm just like, here's this game, here's what it's about, here's what's cool about it, here's this game, here's what's about, and all those games are going to be coming out that week. So
So how do you
then,
get that information? Because a lot of people that go on to Kickstarter, they can see like a preview page, right? So for instance, I have to get a game coming out soon that's got the preview page, but all you can see is
mhm,
literally, coming soon, Nutty Squirrels, but it doesn't give you any other information. So
yeah.
for someone like yourself that has to gather all this information and present it to an audience, where are you getting the information? Are you getting it from the
Right.
developers themselves, or how are you finding it?
Yeah, so sort of started sort of the same way you described, like look at those pages. Sometimes they have the date on them. A lot of times, most of the time they don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a great thread on BGG all about upcoming Kickstarters. That's probably my main source, or about even with some of my other sources, but that's like a great one that anyone can just jump on and check out. And I can provide the link too if
So
that's any help.
BGG is boardgamegeek.com
Right.
for anybody who's listening, and it's
Yeah.
full of RSS feeds and lots of information about upcoming games. Is where a lot of developers and so forth can keep people well informed. So you're well patched in there, I guess, are you?
Yeah, so I'm always so I'm subscribed to that. So anytime there's an update, I give it a quick read, see if there's any new info there. And then I'm also very active in a lot of different Facebook groups, especially since I also design games. I get to I'm involved in those game design Facebook groups as well. And anytime someone's saying, "Oh, hey, I'm releasing a game this week, check it out," then I'll add it to my list. And that's another source. And then, yeah, the other big source is people contacting me directly. When
Yeah.
I started this, I really did it just to offer something to my viewers, and I wasn't really considering the value that this provided to publishers. I was more like, when you're starting a YouTube channel, you're like, oh, what can I offer? What can I offer? You're always thinking about your viewers. But
Yeah.
as I started doing this, like I noticed I was missing games every week. I'm like, oh, well, I missed that game. It happens. Like even the publishers get their release dates wrong a lot of the time, you'll find.
Sure.
So they'll advertise one day, it gets pushed back. So it's a really hard thing to maintain, but for the most part, it's accurate. And because it's providing so much value to them now, because I'm actually getting like a fair amount of subscribers and exposure for them, especially the small publishers who maybe don't have as many resources to get their game out. They've been coming out reaching to me to talk about their game. And if you are a publisher or a small designer or a large designer, by all means, you can check out my website at shelfclutter.com. I have a form on there, and
Yep.
you can just enter all your details. And the form, I sort of hate saying it because it's always like, oh, here's some work for you. But it really helps me keep it manageable. I was doing this all on my own before, and it was a lot.
How do you sort through it all? So, I mean, there's literally hundreds of games that are launched at any given time. You've got roughly 2 episodes you're doing per week. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you pick your two, right? Like how do you kind of narrow it down? Is it based on
Right.
games that you find interesting that you want to play? Or is it what's the process there?
Yeah, so right now I do the weekly upcoming Kickstarter just because that's like pretty much expected of me at this point. So I
Yeah.
gotta deliver on that, and also I enjoy doing that and doing the research myself. One thing you find when you do these videos, you end up backing a lot more Kickstarters because you're so aware. But yeah, and then I do sort of like deep dive videos, and I do some painting videos as well, like painting tutorials, and those are all purely whatever I'm interested in. None of my content is paid, so I just sort of do whatever I'm most interested in, or of course what I think my viewers are interested in. So if there's the latest like command game or anything like that that I know a lot of people are going to be interested in, I'll make sure to cover that. And in those videos, I'll go into a very deep dive on that specific game, going through, here's all the different pledges, here's what you get, here's every update, so you don't have to go through all those yourself. And I also do a lot of other research off the Kickstarter page. Like I go through BGG, I go through Facebook groups, anywhere else on the internet. I try to gather everything and then pull it together. And sometimes even I'm surprised, like when I started doing those, I was like, am I really offering anything new? Like people can just check out the Kickstarter page and then figure that out for themselves. But there's actually like so much information out there that's not easily captured through the Kickstarter page, especially when you're considering these publishers are trying to, put their best foot forward. So sometimes certain things are overlooked.
So what are some of the things that when you're looking at these different pages that you would say are pretty common misses that you come across when you're looking at these various Kickstarter pages, something that you consistently say, wow, this is something this person really missed the boat on. And I'm almost seeing a pattern maybe amongst people who are new to it, or what would you say?
Yeah, so I guess to paraphrase that question, I guess it's sort of you want to ask yourself, like, is this game worth backing? And I think there's really 4 main reasons for that. And the first one is one that is I almost don't want to consider it as a reason, but it is. If you go to any Kickstarter page, they always say this. They're always like, oh, support us because you believe in us, which is great. And anyone who does that, definitely respect that. But I think a Kickstarter really needs to give you a reason to support them, not just say like, hey, we make games, give us money. Because like, what's the difference from me giving them money because I want to help them in their efforts versus just going to some random person on the street? So I think if any publisher or designer is going to be saying, hey, back us because you believe in us, I hope that they're doing a little bit more than just like creating a Kickstarter. I hope they're doing like really solid play testing, being active in the community, maybe even like helping other designers or content creators or other publishers like working together, who knows. So if they're claiming that or asking for you to back because of that reason, I hope that they're doing their part to give back as well. So I think I see that a lot, but I often miss the side of like, okay, what are you doing for us other than trying to sell us a game? And I am very consumer focused. Like, that's my #1 priority is my viewers. I'm not doing this for the publishers, but they do happen to benefit from my work. So I think that's the first one. And then the second one is, this is probably the biggest one. I'm not going in any particular order here, but are you going to get something from this Kickstarter that you can't get from buying it from retail? And that could be extra content or deluxe components, things like that. And those all add value. So that's like a very good reason to back a Kickstarter. And I think everyone feels that as well. I think that's what creates a lot of the FOMO, because if you don't get that, then your opportunity is lost, or you're going to be buying it potentially at a larger cost aftermarket. So I think that's another big one. And then this next one is also one I don't really consider as a reason to back, but a discount. So anytime you see a discount on a Kickstarter, it's almost always, I don't want to go as far to say it's a lie, but it's almost never a deal. Like, at the very best case, you'll get it for the same price at retail. After you consider shipping, especially if you're outside of the US, where you got to pay conversion fees potentially. And a trend I'm seeing now as well is taxes are becoming more and more common for Kickstarters. Sure. And I think that's going to continue to go down that path. So it's very unlikely that you're ever going to get a game cheaper on Kickstarter than if you wait till retail. So if they're not offering you anything extra for the Kickstarter, then it's probably best to just go for the retail edition.
Now that's assuming it's going to actually make it to retail, right? That's another big ball of wax altogether. And speaking from experience, if you're working through certain distributors, you're in the good company that allows you to get to retail. What I see with most Kickstarters is they don't have those channels, right? So you got the giant ones, and even some of the giant ones I've talked to have said, you know what, we're focused on online because we can't necessarily get to retail. We don't have the channel set up, or we have to find a distributor who's going to take too much of a cut or to put up and so forth. So
the fourth one was just getting it early. So to me, that's not a huge value add because I have like 60 games I still need to play basically at any time. But that's the last one there.
Being a game designer yourself, you've designed 2 games so far, I think, or more. I know 2 that you've kind of taken to completion. Can you talk a little bit about what are these games about and what kind of style are they?
The first one I started on is pretty large, and it's called The Great Wide Open. And in this game, you've crash landed your plane into the middle of the Arctic, and nature doesn't want you there, and you're just trying to survive. And throughout the game, it's sort of a bit of push your luck. You can stop and try to conserve your energy or like forage and things like that, or you can keep pushing through the storm, uncovering tiles. And if you uncover a certain amount of locations, like 3 special buildings, then you draw a random card of like, here's your end, here's your like your end goal. If you can fulfill that, you win the game. So it's a few different end case scenarios, but you're pushing your luck, trying to survive. And then when you finally get there, well, now you actually have to complete that objective to win the game. And right now that plays 1 to 3 players, which a lot of publishers don't like. So if anyone wants to ask me any questions about the game design aspect and also like pitching to publishers, feel free to reach out. But you can play solo, you can play co-op as like 2 survivors, or you play 1 versus 1 where one person's actually playing as nature. And that's how I originally designed it, was 1v1. And then you can also play 2v1. So one person's playing as nature and you got 2 survivors. And cool. It's really coming together, and the theme's really, really solid and meshes well with the mechanics. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
And the other one is like a Mars-based type game, I guess, is it?
Yeah, right now it's a Mars-based game. So I designed that one not too long ago, and I was entering it into a contest. I'm like, I need a name for this. And it started as a roll and write. I ended up getting rid of the dice, so now it's like a speak and write, which is actually like a concept you don't see a lot. I've never seen it, so I just coined that term, I guess. But it's a speak and write. So it's sort of like Battleship, where on your turn you pick a location on the grid, but then everyone has to fill it in, whether it helps them or not. And there are ways to mitigate that or manipulate that to your favor. But yeah, it has a name quite similar to another Mars game. I'll be changing that name for a few reasons, but
lawsuits.
Yeah, that's potentially one of them. But also, like, this is a game that I want to be accessible to even non-gamers, and the idea of like colonizing Mars is pretty awesome to like geeks like us, and to a lot of people, of course. Like, who doesn't want to fly to Mars and check it out one day?
Sure.
But I think it is one of those themes that's maybe a little too sci-fi or not very cutesy. So trying to work on that and work on something that's suits it a little better. And the nice thing about doing these contests is you get a ton of feedback. So that's actually the original reason. Like, I don't really care about winning. If I do, that's awesome. But it's really just a great opportunity to get feedback, because you're getting people that are looking at your game from a technical standpoint, listening to every word because they want to give you good feedback and things like that. And they want to make sure that they're giving you proper rankings relative to other games. So yeah, these contests are invaluable. I definitely recommend them if you're designing a game. Yeah, I've been doing pretty well with that. And a lot of the feedback was like, dude, change the name.
Well, that's a great thing about games, I think, is that you can either have a mechanic, right, that you need to find a theme for, or you can have a theme that you got to go and find a mechanic for.
Yeah.
And you can swap those in and out, which is great. And a lot of people do that. They'll have a really cool mechanic, but they'll say, you know what, talking to Analog Studios, Richard McRae, for example, talks about this, where he found a game where he's a publisher. He really liked the mechanic of the game, but he didn't necessarily find the theme super compelling. So said, you know what, I think I can actually do something with this, but we need to take a theme in a different direction, which I think is pretty cool. So how does that pivot now into Evergreen? So when people try to read, how do people find you, like, with that company? If they're looking for a game they want to publish, do they just reach out and say, hey, can you help me, or how does that work?
Yeah, so Daryl has a lot of, he knows a lot of different people. So I think just him saying like, hey, I'm doing this, everyone's like, oh, really? Well, I have this game I want designed and I don't have time to work on it. So they reach out to him. Also, a lot seem to come through other publishers. I think if maybe a publisher isn't interested in a game, or it's not even so much that they're not interested. It's a lot of times it's just, hey, that doesn't fit our niche or our audience. And then they'll say, hey, Daryl, this person's interested to talk to you. There wasn't a good fit for us, but maybe it's a good fit for you. And I know he's also, like, he's so active, like, this is what he does. So
yeah,
I don't want to, I mean, he does a great job at what he does. So, but yeah, he's always spotting good games. And even when I bring one of my games to him, he's always providing value. Like you can tell he's got experience.
So where's the monetization there? Is it on the back end? Is it when you take the game and publish it, or you find a publisher? Is that how, like, I'm trying to figure where the monetization is in that whole chain there.
So I think it's pretty flexible. So usually we would so he's very good at negotiating. So where a average person would be able to get maybe like 5%. This is another reason why I don't really want to go with publishers, because you get like 5%. It's very small. Mm-hmm. Mind you, they do have a lot of costs and risks and overhead. Mm-hmm. So it can be justified. But if you said, hey, Daryl, you talk to them instead of me, he could get like 10% because he's got a reputation. He's been doing this for years. He knows exactly what a game costs. Like no one can pull one over on him, right? So usually we can get them a better percentage than what they would on their own, but then also quite a lot better, so that we could take 2% or something like that. And that's one way. And then another way is just a flat fee, or if it's just like, hey, you pay us whatever just for this one thing. Okay, we did that. Here you go. Depends on how involved, I guess, they want us to be. But yeah, we're very flexible on that, and it sort of depends on what the individual we're working with, whatever works best for them.
Seems like a good resource for people. I know of just from some of the prototype game nights at some of the local cafes now, more last year, because obviously we're in the middle of COVID. But I met several individuals that were looking for help, looking for publishers. I had one that I was even, helping myself, just saying, hey, I'll give you any advice I can. Mm-hmm. I'm already working on my own stuff, but here's some advice.
Yeah.
But someone like that, it sounds like your company would be perfect to send them to say, well, here's some advice, but if you really want somebody to kind of take you by the hand and take you to the next step, or walk you over to a publisher, Evergreen's a company you need to talk to. Here's the contact mm-hmm. information, reach out to them. So
yeah,
that's fairly cool. So not only are you a YouTuber extraordinaire, but you guys really have kind of this resource for people in the industry that there's not a lot of options out there for that, right? There's not a lot of places where people can just go. So I think that's pretty cool that Evergreen offers that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that's like so useful, because I know when I started, like, I'm a pretty smart guy, and I think like it's not even being smart that's important. It's just like being resilient and like determined. Like if you work on something long enough and you're learning from your mistakes, it'll get better, right? But if you can, it's great to learn from your own mistakes, but it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. And like people in the industry have seen it all, right? So even just the act of reaching out to someone, even if you're not paying for any services, like saying like, oh, hey, here's my game, are you interested? Like if I presented a game to someone who knew a lot about the industry, they'd say, hey, I'm not interested, but they'd also tell you why. Mm-hmm. And then you can say, okay, I've been looking at this too much from a perspective of what do I want in a game, but in order to sell it, you need to be considering what does everyone else want out of a game. So I think that's one of the first mistakes any designer makes is they'll be designing it to what they want and what they want in a game, which is fine. But a lot of times you're too close to it as well, and you sort of you're not completely honest with yourself. You overlook some of the issues with the game because you're trying so hard to like complete this vision, I guess. So I think there's a big value in getting in front of other people. And if anyone who watches my channel, they'll notice that I talk about playtesting all the time. And that's one of the things I look for when I'm judging is like, do I want to back this campaign? Because a lot of times it looks beautiful. They have all this great art. They have miniatures, like everything you could ever want. And then it's like, oh, there's literally 0 reviews on BGG. No one's rated it. Like, how do I know this has even been play tested? So it's like, all that's great, but if you can't play it, then it's just essentially garbage, right?
Is that advice you would give to somebody? Would you say, before you launch, play test this either through Tabletop Simulator or one of these other tools, but get in front of people, but then get them to put reviews on boardgamegeek.com?
Yeah, definitely. If you ever want to, like, I feel like we cover a lot in that one episode, which is great, but if you ever want to like focus on one, like I could talk easily a half hour on each one. But yeah, with designing a game, there's sort of like a few phases you'll go through. First, it's like your idea. you can tell people about your idea. Mostly like at that point, your playtesting is talking about it with other people, and then playtesting it yourself, because you can only get so much value out of playtesting something that's so far from being a game still.
Sure.
With other people. You'll probably just end up pissing them off and they won't play test with you next time. Yeah. Well, not pissing them off, but so I think there's that. Do it on your own for a while. Once you start feeling like, okay, this is coming together, it looks like a game, feels like a game, has rules, then you'd start to play test it with other people, and you could be a part of that. You could observe, and that's like, I think that's the best. That's like the best part of designing a game, because at that point you're starting to see like, well, you need to be very okay with criticism, because a lot of people will not like your game, especially at that point. And it's expected. Yeah. Like, it's not balanced. You probably just came up with it within a couple months ago. But that's really where you see the biggest jumps, because you're like, okay, this person felt this way. Why did they feel that way? Oh, they felt like it was overwhelming. Well, maybe I should start stripping out these things that maybe add too much complexity versus the amount of fun that they add. And then you really start stripping it down. You start seeing like, okay, where's the real core value of this game? What's it offering that's unique that people are really gravitating towards? And then you're like, okay, well, people love this thing, but it only happens once throughout the entire game. Why don't I make it happen like every round? Because it's something that everyone loves. And then you start really seeing your game transform into something that people are getting excited about. And then the next phase would be, okay, once you're locked that in, you've written your rules and all that, then you can start doing blind play testing. And that's more about trying to play test, see if people can understand your game from your rules.
Sure.
And then there's another aspect of this that I'm not too familiar with, but like, you sort of want your game to a certain point, obviously not completed, but like to a certain point when you start play testing it with other people. Then you want it to a certain point when you start blind play testing it. And then you want it to a certain point to when you show it to a publisher, because a publisher is going to want you to change stuff, almost guaranteed. Yeah. So you don't want to have like in your mind, this is complete, this is done, because a publisher is going to say, that doesn't work for me. If you want this exactly as is, like, we can't publish that, because they're going to say like, okay, great, it plays 3 players, we need it to play 4 players. Like, that'll just be a hard requirement. Or they'll say like, that theme won't work with our audience. Like, we need to change the theme.
Or they might say you got a whole bunch of minis in there, and that's going to make this cost prohibitive. So we want to replace it with cubes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a huge one,
right?
Yeah, that's a huge one. Because like, usually a designer's not thinking about cost. A designer is like thinking about like, I want to make this grand, amazing game that's so much fun and has beautiful $1,000 components. Yeah. And you're not thinking about the cost, and like little things like cardstock or even dice. Like, dice are so expensive. Yeah. So many people just try to avoid dice.
Well, certainly it's a crowded space, and it's cool to see someone like yourself kind of carving out your own niche and really taking your audience's needs to heart. So I want to thank you for your contribution back to the community as a whole. And I also want to say thanks for coming on this podcast. The time goes by so fast. And thank you so much for your time, and all the best to you and in these ventures.
Yeah, this was fun. Yeah, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Alrighty, you take care. Cheers.
Yeah, you too. Take care.